Hello there. My name is Mint, my pronouns are he, they, and welcome back to another video. If it's not welcome back and you're just stumbling upon my channel, welcome to my descent into madness. This is how I document it, and today we're making some Regency pants. Sorta. Shorts, pant short capris. We're making Regency-inspired leg wear to wear out to a bar for a bachelorette party. Incredibly niche and specific thing to make, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. So let's get into it. This is going to be a long one. Grab a cup of coffee, grab some tea, whatever you want, and some snacks, and sit and watch. And if you need sewing tips, this is a great place to get them because I'm going to go really in depth into my process of how I made these pants. So we started out by drafting the pattern. So I did not drape this. I just fully drafted it using my measurements. And so I do that on Procreate. I have my whole process that I do, which I can go into in another video if people want. But I made some adjustments based on measurements. I added my seam allowance. And then I went ahead and made a prototype out of some broadcloth that I was using for muslin. I'm not going to show you this because the prototype was so sheer. It was so see-through. You could see everything. I made a couple of adjustments, and then I went on to my fashion fabric. So I'm using some leftover satin and lace that I used to make my wedding suit. I'll link that video above and below. I do use a projector for my patterns because I make them digitally. It's a lot easier to also project them digitally rather than having to print out a million pieces of paper and tape them together. So I highly recommend getting a projector, investing in that if sewing is something you do a lot. It has cut down my time of like prepping to sew in like a third at least, if not more than that. My one complaint that I have about using a projector is that I don't have a large enough cutting mat to use a rotary cutter, which would make my cutting a lot more accurate because I don't have to lift the fabric at all to cut with scissors. So I highly suggest if you're using a projector, also use a rotary cutter. It's an investment to get all of those things, so like absolutely not necessary, but that is my preference, just so you know. We went ahead and cut out the lace, which has this beautiful detail, this sort of like scalloped edge at the end of it. So I went ahead and made sure that that matched up with the edge of the lace, so that I can use that as the end of all of my lace pieces. And then my wonderful husband went ahead and cut off the excess netting of that lace for me. He's working so hard. He's working so hard. Thank you, baby.
You're welcome, baby.
And then we started gathering the lace. So we did this by sewing 2 basting stitches. So what that means is you're going to use your longest stitch length. You're not going to backstitch at the beginning or the end, and you're going to leave really long tails of your threads. This is so that we can pull on that bobbin thread and gather along that stitch line. And we're going to do 2 lines of that basting stitch just to keep everything nice and even. If you do it just with 1 line, it can get a little wonky sometimes, so we instead do 2 lines about a 1/4 inch apart and a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the lace, just to keep everything nice and even. So I went ahead and gathered that, again, by pulling on the bobbin threads. Then I put together the lace with the knee band. So I went ahead and made sure everything matched up and put it right sides together. You'll notice in this clip, I am doing it backwards. I accidentally have the knee band up when it should be down. Everything should be sandwiched together. It shouldn't look like that. But I do fix it later. So yeah, so we're going to put everything right sides together. The smallest strip of lace is going to go right sides together with the satin knee band, and then the other lace is going to go right side down on top of that other lace, so that we have the 2 lace layers right side to wrong side, and then the lace right side to the satin right side. Does that make sense? Just look at what I'm doing and it'll make more sense. So yeah, then I had to seam rip the lace off and then reattach the knee band the correct way, with all of those layers sandwiched together so that it is proper. And when I unfold it, you'll be able to see both right sides. Next up, we went on to interfacing. So I cut out the interfacing for my fly front, my fly shield, my waistband. And I made sure to cut that interfacing smaller than each fabric piece so that it doesn't end up inside the seam allowance. So go ahead and if you're still projecting your pattern, go ahead and use the inside stitching line as your mark for where to cut the interfacing. Or if you're just using your pattern pieces to cut out your interfacing, just do half an inch less on each side. I do use fusible interfacing, which is why I cut it smaller than the seam allowance. So I do go ahead and just use my iron to fuse that together, making sure to not move the iron too much so I don't wrinkle anything. Okay, now it's time for the zipper fly. So this is honestly the most complicated part of the entire garment. I'm going to walk you through step by step so you understand what's going on. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I will do my best to clarify because it is a complicated process. Thank you so much to Kiana Bonolo. Her videos and tutorials are so helpful in understanding how to do technical things, especially things like a zipper fly. I used her tutorial of her, I think it's her wide leg pleated trousers, as a great example for myself as I was making this video to make sure I was following the steps properly. So I highly recommend her content. Thank you, Kiana. I appreciate your tips so much. But here's what I did. So I did use 2 layers for my fly facing because I don't have a serger. So instead of serging the outside of the fly facing, I just used 2 layers. Stitched those together on the curved edge, clipped into the seam allowance at that curve, turned it right side out, and pressed it clean. I then attached this right sides together to the left side of my front pant leg, matching the straight edge to straight edge. And then now we're going to press this open first. Clip our excess seam allowance and also add a 1/2 inch notch into the leg right underneath where the zipper fly is. The point of that is allowing us to treat the leg seam allowance and the fly seam allowance as 2 separate pieces. So if we are turning in the fly seam allowance like we're about to do, then we don't have to worry about also turning in the leg seam allowance, which we'll deal with later. Now press the fly facing around to the inside of the pant leg, bringing that seam allowance inside with it as well, and top stitch along the straight edge just to keep it in place. Now comes the scary part. We're going to actually attach the zipper. Lay your zipper face down on the fly facing and begin to pin it only to the fly facing, not to the pant leg, just the fly facing, on the side of the zipper closest to the curved side of the fly facing. Again, this will make more sense if you pay attention to what I'm doing. Look at my steps because it doesn't make a ton of sense just by words. Then you're going to flip open the fly facing from the pants as you pin just to make it a little easier and make sure you don't catch any of the pant. And you're only catching the zipper and the fly facing. Now we're going to open up the zipper and stitch in that same place that we pinned and try and get close to the zipper teeth, but not too close. And then we're going to go ahead and pin the unstitched side of the zipper upwards at the very bottom so that we don't catch it on this next stitch we're going to do. Now you can either use your fly facing pattern piece if you have one as a template, or in my case, my fabric was sheer enough that I could see the fly facing through it. And we're going to top stitch along that curved edge to bring that fly facing nice and flat with the front of the pants. Next up, we're attaching the fly shield. This is going to be your rectangular piece that has a very slight curve at the bottom.
Blah, blah, blah. Proper name, place name, backstory stuff.
Go ahead and lay that fly shield on top of the zipper, matching up those straight edges. It might be a little tricky, but you'll just want to grab the zipper edge and the fly shield and pin those together. So now we're going to stitch again right where we pinned, nice and close to zipper teeth, but again, not too close. And we should only be catching the zipper and the fly facing, not the pant leg. Now, remember how we made a notch under our fly facing in the seam allowance? We're going to make the same notch on the right leg and fold the seam allowance above that by 1/2 inch and press it. We're then going to lay the right pant leg on top of the right side of the zipper. This is the right side if you are wearing the pants. And this should be above the fly shield and connected to it, and below the fly facing and not connected to that. So make sure the fabric is close but not covering the zipper teeth as well. Then we're going to really carefully stitch right where we pinned there. And that's it. We have a working zipper. It looks beautiful. It looks gorgeous. It's attached to both pant legs. It's amazing. This was the hardest part of this entire set of pants. 100%. So you've done the hard part. Now we get to move on to the fun stuff. There's a few ways now to attach the crotch line of the pants underneath that notch we made in the seam allowance. Personally, I like to just line them up right sides together and then stitch all the way up that seam. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and just stitch up the entire crotch seam. I am going to also stitch up the entire crotch seam of my back leg pieces right sides together. So now we can match up our back and our front at the side seams. So make sure if you are making your own pattern that the length of these side seams matches up in terms of proper length, size, everything. They should start and stop at the same place. Then we're going to stitch those side seams together, and now we're going to put our inseams together. So this is another spot where you are wanting to match if you're making your own pattern, or if you are adjusting the hemline of a pattern that already exists. You're going to want to make sure that your inseam is exactly the same length on the front and the back. So now we have pants. Yay!
Pants.
Time for a little try on. So these are obviously pretty sheer, so I do have them on over my Howl's Moving Castle pajama pants. So don't mind that. We will be adding a lining. But now I'm just showing you where I'm about to put that ruffle at the bottom to make sure that I like the placement. And also just look at that zipper fly. It looks magnificent. Chef's kiss. I'm so proud of it. Best zipper fly I have ever done. I feel like I've mastered this talent now. I'm so happy with it. And now, of course, we have a wonderful moment where we go, wow, I did that so well, and then I realized I did something wrong. I forgot to put in the pockets. So we are going to seam rip along the side seams down to where the pockets go, leaving enough space to put those pockets in, and then leaving space at the top as well. Um, and then I have 4 pocket pieces. I'm just going to attach them to the 4 leg pieces, making sure to match up my front and back. And then I'm going to stitch those nice and securely to each side. And then I'm going to pin my side seams and my pockets all together so that they are nice and lined up. And then I will be refinishing my side seams that I opened up, pivoting my stitching to go all the way around my pocket, and then pivot again to finish up my side seam. Next up, we are making our lining, which is just like the shell, but so much simpler because it doesn't have a zipper or pockets. So go ahead and stitch those back pieces together at the crotch seam and do the same with the front pieces, leaving a gap, 9 inches in my case, for a zipper at the front. Again, we're not attaching a zipper separately to the lining. We're just going to be attaching the lining to where the zipper is on the shell. Then we're also going to stitch together at the side seams and the inseam, just as we did for the shell, but again, not leaving space for pockets this time. Now we're going to take our finished lining and place it actually wrong sides together with the shell, making sure that it matches up front to front and back to back. We are then going to pin along the waist. Don't worry about making this stitching line too pretty. Just keep it nice and high up as much as you can. It is going to be covered by the waistband later, so it doesn't need to be perfect. We are also going to take that extra 9-inch area at the front of the lining that we left open for the zipper, turn that seam allowance under by 1/2 inch, and line it up with the stitching lines on the fly facing and the fly shield, making sure that when we stitch it down, it doesn't cover up the zipper teeth at all. And now we stitch it all together. Now it's time for another try on to make sure the pocket and the zipper still work and the lining is thick enough so we're not see-through anymore. And this try on was successful. So now that means we're going to prep to add those ruffles at the bottom of the pants. So I'm first going to stitch the band and the lace right sides together at the edge so it makes a complete circle. And then I'm going to pin that right sides together to the bottom of my pant leg, easing it in as necessary. I would suggest doing another basting stitch around the bottom of your pants if the pants are a little bit bigger than the size of that band. I ended up just making a couple of small little pleats, but really the best way to do this is to do a basting stitch and ease it in. Once it's all nice and lined up, I will stitch that together, again, right sides together, and then flip it out. Then I'm going to take my other knee band, turn my pants inside out, place that knee band on the inside, and attach that right sides together. So I'm going to stitch it right sides together at the bottom near the lace first, and then flip it over so we're wrong sides together, turn in my seam allowance, line it up really, really well, and then we're going to stitch in the ditch on the top to attach that to the top of it. I know it sounds complicated. I know I said the zipper was the most complicated part of this. This is also pretty complicated, I will admit. This is a complicated pair of pants. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to stitch in the ditch, but we are also going to leave a inch wide hole so that we can feed our elastic through that band. So once we fed that elastic through, we're then going to attach it together by doing a zigzag stitch back and forth a couple of times just to make that elastic a complete circle. And then we're going to finish stitching in the ditch and completely encase that elastic inside of the band. Now enjoy a moment of me ripping a beautiful clean line into the satin. Let's just take a second to appreciate that. I'm going to take that long strip of fabric that I just made that's nice and even because we ripped along the grain line, and we're going to be using this for belt loops. I'd planned to add several belt loops to this, but then I forgot about them. So I only added one, but I only really wanted one so that I could clip my keys onto these pants. So I just ended up doing one on the left side. We are going to sew this folded over on itself about a 1/2 inch away from that folded edge. We're going to cut off the excess with pinking shears so it doesn't fray, and then use a safety pin to turn it right side out. Then you've got a nice clean string to use for belt loops, spaghetti straps, corset ties, whatever you need, and you can adjust the thickness of this by how close you sew to that folded edge. So I ended up getting pretty thin because I wanted to do thin belt loops for this, but you can make it much thicker if you want. Moving on to the waistband. This does have a seam in the center back like most tailored men's pants do. So this is so you can make any adjustments to the waistband along with the back center seam, just in case something doesn't fit quite right. You can always make adjustments later. So we'll go ahead and attach it to the right side together at the back. Press that open, and then we'll pin the waistband to the waist of the pants, making sure that we're covering that stitching line that we had from attaching the lining to the shell. And again, we're doing this right sides together first, and we are folding over the end of that over the zipper so that we're going to encase the end of that zipper so we have a nice clean edge when we're done. And then we're going to, of course, stitch it right sides together. And then, of course, I was standing right in front of the camera here, but I am just folding over that waistband and pressing it nice and flat, and preparing to stitch in the ditch again. I'll go into a little bit more detail now about exactly what that means, because I know I mentioned it briefly earlier, but this is where it really shines. So basically, I am making sure that when I fold my seam allowance over and pin it to the inside of the pants, it's reaching down just a little bit further than my stitching line so that when I top stitch in that already existing seam, the ditch, I'll be able to snag that seam allowance underneath and keep it in place. And now I'm going to do exactly that. Again, this is called stitching in the ditch. It is a very finicky thing to do. So I do feel like I'm still getting the hang of doing it properly. I had to do it several times in this project, both in the knee band and the waistband. I'm really, really happy with how it turned out in the waistband. I think it looks amazing. I feel like I'm really getting the hang of it now, but this is definitely an intermediate to advanced sewing technique. So just keep that in mind if you're going to try to make pants similar to this. And I am starting and ending my stitch by going up the side of the waistband just to close up that edge where I already have it folded in together. Now I'm going to make a buttonhole. I just use tailor's chalk to mark a start and a stop by measuring the size of my button. I definitely recommend using an actual buttonhole foot for this, but I don't know where mine is for this machine. And since I know exactly where I'm starting and stopping because of those marks I made with the tailor's chalk, and I know what stitches I need to use, I know exactly how to do it on my machine. It's not a big deal for me to do it using a regular presser foot, but I definitely recommend use a buttonhole foot. It will make your life so much easier. Now I'm going to pin down on either side of that buttonhole at the start and the stop and use my seam ripper to just pierce through and open up that buttonhole. If you have buttonhole scissors, awesome, use those. But if you don't, this is a really great option to use to cut open a buttonhole and not go too far by accident. So that's why you have those pins there so you don't pierce further than you're planning to, because that has happened to me a couple of times. And then the last step is to just hand stitch on that button, and then we're done. We've got pants. Ignore the fact that I'm wearing this just with a t-shirt. I'm going to be making a vest slash corset to go with this at some point in the next video. That'll probably be out next week. And we'll have a whole outfit for this Regency Bachelorette party. Our little sort of like completely historically inaccurate going out to bars version of men's Regency outfits. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this. Let me know if you're interested in me making a pattern for these pants, or if you want to pair yourself, send me a message. Send me a DM on Instagram, TikTok, wherever your preferred platform is. My handle is the same everywhere. It's Mint A Lavelle. That's where I am everywhere. I'm mintalavelle.sew on Instagram as well for my sewing stuff specifically. If you want these pants or any sort of custom item from me, send me a DM. Let me know. We'll chat. We'll figure something out. And yeah, I'm considering starting to make patterns to put onto Etsy. So that is a process that I will be sharing with you guys as I figure it out, as I go through it. So let me know if you have any questions about that. If you have any ideas of patterns that you want to see, whether that's dresses, shirts, pants, corsets, whatever you want, let me know. And yeah, that's it for today. Make sure you leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to see future videos, especially if I'm going to start making patterns. You'll want to know what's coming out next. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.